They're trying to make it seem like Tucker Carlson is some outlier, fringe, conspiracy theorist. He doesn't share the views of everybody. He's just espousing the views of a very fringe little minority of Republicans. And it's just not true at all. While he was on Theo Von's show, he said the thing that we all think, which is Epstein absolutely did not kill himself. He was murdered, and there was a cover-up.
And the Epstein thing, I've never understood what the justification for keeping that information secret. Epstein was murdered in prison, okay? I know a lot about it. I'm not just throwing that out there. Epstein was murdered in prison.
Well, they put him with a cellmate that was kind of a crazy, former police officer, right?
Yeah, a former police officer killed a number of drug dealers. I'm not saying that guy did it, but I'm saying, I asked Bureau of Prisons because I learned all this stuff about it because I know Epstein's brother, Mark, well. And I never expected to go down this rabbit hole at all. The guy called me like a week after his brother was killed.
Mark did?
Yeah. And so, I was literally sitting in my backyard in Maine, and he called me, and I don't know how he got my cell. And it ended up this years-long thing. It's not interesting, and I won't bore you with it, but the bottom line is Jeff Epstein was murdered in federal lockup in Manhattan in the secure unit. I think there were only 16 men on the unit, and I think only 14 there that night. I may have that slightly wrong, but it's very small, and it's the most secure federal lockup in the United States, and he got murdered in it. So that raises all kinds of obvious questions, like who has the power to do that? So that's a big deal. And then the attorney general at the time helped cover it up. And I know him. And Bill Barr. So I say that, and he's like, I'm going to sue you. And I said, go ahead and sue me. I hope you will. And what's the answer? Like, why don't you answer? He never will. Well, it turns out, and this does make you crazy, that his father, Donald Barr, is the guy who started Epstein's career, who both gave him his first job, for which he was not qualified, and then got him his second job at Bear Stearns, for which he was definitely unqualified. What is that? Former CIA guy, OSS guy. But anyway, the point is that question of how an American citizen, kid toucher or not, could get murdered in federal lockup in our biggest city. Like, holy shit, that should scare everybody. And then the Attorney General of the United States is covering it up. He admitted, this is the Attorney General, when Epstein was murdered, said, I told everyone around me, we need to make sure the country believes this was a suicide. It's like, you haven't even done a freaking investigation. You're the chief law enforcement officer, and you're telling me the outcome before you even look into it?
How do you know that?
Because he admitted it in his autobiography. And so I'm not guessing at any of this stuff, okay? So I call Bureau of Prisons, and I'm like, I want the names of the inmates who are serving on this block, because clearly nobody got in or out of the block. It's
right. Well, it also was a question to our prison system. It's like, how would you not know? Like, obviously, this is the guy you have to protect.
They did it on purpose, and he was murdered clearly by another inmate. And there is so much. I mean, I did like an hour on this. Anyone interested can look it up, but I'm not a conspiracy nut at all. I've been a journalist my whole life. I've often been wrong, but I've always been attentive to what I believe the facts to be. I think it really matters whether you're accurate, and I've tried to be. So it was not a perfect storm of screw-ups. They never did the investigation into how this guy died. They redressed him in clothes that he wasn't wearing when he died for pictures in the hospital infirmary. All the records of what happened to his body are gone. And critically, we cannot get, and I tried directly by calling the Attorney General's office, I want a list of the names of the inmates. It's publicly available. They're convicted felons, dude. Yeah. This is not secret information. It's not national security information. Why can't you tell me that? They allowed him to be murdered in federal lockup. So leave all the pedo island stuff out of it. And just ask yourself, how can we continue to live in a country where a high-profile inmate can be murdered in our prison system by who's powerful enough to do that?
Right.
And so these are not only legitimate questions, they're essential questions. And like, we're mad at the people asking them?
That's the weirdest thing.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
There's actually some updates. I mean, look, Tucker is saying exactly what we're all thinking about Epstein. And it, again, just kind of points to why we can't trust the Charlie Kirk assassination narrative either. We can't trust much of what the government says, unfortunately, or at least we should be very, very skeptical. Even if you do trust them and you do come to the same conclusion as them, which we'd hope that most of the time, I would hope that most of the time our federal law enforcement, and just our law enforcement in general, is actually doing the job and getting the right people. But I don't know what the statistic is. I don't think it's actually that high. I think that most murders, for example, go unsolved. I think it's about 50-50. And of the 50% that they think they've solved, how many of them are wrongful convictions? Probably a lot. How many have they covered up and just pinned it on the wrong person? Probably, there's probably a number there. So we shouldn't be necessarily just trusting them. We should be being skeptical, remain skeptical, do our own investigations, use our brains, use logic, those types of things. They count on us not. They count on us not using our brains at all. But there is some update to the Epstein saga. I didn't think it could happen to me, but just recently someone stole my information and actually bought a car under my name in Texas. While I was standing in the Idaho DMV getting my new driver's license, a thief was driving off the dealer lot pretending to be me. And I only caught it because I was getting bombarded with alerts. Now imagine if I hadn't seen them in time. And this is exactly why today's sponsor, Aura, matters. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your personal info, your phone number, your address, even where you supposedly work, it's because of data brokers. These shady companies collect your data and sell it to anyone, from marketers to scammers, and they make billions doing it. They don't ask your permission. And while they're legally required to remove your info if you ask, they make the process nearly impossible on purpose. Believe me, I'm going through it right now. But if I had Aura set up before, this thief would have had a much harder time. Aura automatically scans and scrubs your information from those data broker sites, and then it keeps it off. It also gives you real-time fraud alerts, so instead of finding out a day later that someone used your name, you get notified right away. That's the kind of tool I wish I had in place when all of this happened. But Aura is more than just removing your data from shady brokers. It's an all-in-one digital security app. It alerts you if your personal info is found on the dark web. It monitors your credit and bank accounts in real time. It gives you a secure VPN, password manager, antivirus, and more. And if something does happen, Aura covers you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. The fact that companies profit off of our stolen data while we're left vulnerable is outrageous. I learned that the hard way. But I'm not leaving myself unprotected anymore, and you shouldn't either. Protect yourself and your family with Aura. Try it free for 14 days at aura.com/Kim Iverson. And in just 2 weeks, Aura will show you where your personal data is being exposed and start scrubbing it off the internet automatically. Again, that's aura.com/Kim Iverson. A grand jury, a judge grants requests to unseal the grand jury records in the Epstein case. Also, just last week, a judge also, at the request of the Department of Justice, also is releasing the grand jury records for Ghislaine Maxwell's trial as well. So we should be getting Jeffrey Epstein's trial as well as Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, which is pretty interesting. What are we going to learn from that? Maybe a few more details. Maybe there's going to be some new names that we might find from the grand jury records. There could be new information. They say that they're going to be releasing any of them and all of them, except they're going to be redacting victims' names, they claim. So what are we going to get redacted versus what's actually out there? Are we going to get anything new? That's kind of the big question. Are they just releasing stuff that we already have all of this information and they redact anything that we don't have? I mean, there have been some really strange redactions that they've been doing that are, redactions on chalkboards, redactions on phones, redactions of things that we already have circulating on the internet, the unredacted versions of those images, for example, unredacted versions of court records, and yet they're still redacting them, spending a bunch of money, $1 million on redacting in overtime pay also. So maybe it's just a way for them to milk the system and get some more money. Thank goodness for Doge, right? That did really a great job. But, we are supposed to be getting these records. This is because of the new law that was passed saying that there's transparency in the Jeffrey Epstein case. So the Department of Justice, in order to follow along with the law, has requested for these grand jury records to be unsealed, and a judge has granted that. So we'll find out, what will we find out? Probably more of the same. I don't think there's going to be anything new or breaking, and I don't think anybody is going to actually be held accountable for anything. I don't think there's going to be anything that is done in regards to the Jeffrey Epstein case. I just, whatever we know is all that we're going to know. There have been some new names that were dropped earlier today. It was Princess Sophia of Sweden. Yeah, I didn't know Sweden had a monarchy, but apparently they have one that, nobody's really all that aware of. But apparently she was a model when she was younger, and this is before she married the prince and became a princess. And she has been linked today with Jeffrey Epstein, having visited him a few times. She is now saying that was over 20 years ago. When she was 21, she's 41 now. So there's maybe some new scandal in a royal family going on, that maybe the princess, before she was a princess and she was a model, which makes sense, was palling around with Jeffrey Epstein, or maybe she was a victim. Maybe that's how she got her position of power. That's the question that many of us want to know, is how many of these people has he been able to get into his clutches and then use them to put them in positions of power so that there's at least some sway. Now, I don't think the monarchy in Sweden has a lot of sway. Maybe they do, though. I'm not really aware of how Sweden's system works. I mean, I'm sure the monarchy doesn't have any real political power, but there's certainly powerful people who are, powerful people who are very, who maybe the princess is connected to. And it's important to remember that this doesn't just affect the United States, that the Epstein saga, they seem to have been able to get into the clutches of a lot of very powerful places in a lot of powerful countries, not just the United States. And maybe that's why so many countries have gone along with whatever Israel wants, because they've got everybody by the nuts. That's what it seems like. And with that recent scandal coming out today of the princess, it just adds to that. Did they get her to date? Was she blackmailed, compromised? So then they were able to get her to marry the Prince of Sweden, and he's connected to powerful people in Sweden and Swedish politics to make sure that Israel gets whatever they want. I don't know. But it's a fair question to ask. I think it's a completely fair question to ask. The blackmail regime wasn't just about, pedophiles being pedophiles and being perverts. No, there was a purpose for it. The purpose was, it seems, to gain influence in governments. So one should question a little bit more everything that's been going on when it comes to Epstein. Certainly don't believe the official narrative. And Tucker, it's not really that big a news that Tucker's saying, yeah, I don't think he was suicide. I don't think he committed suicide. He was suicided. I think many of us think that. I think probably the majority of people, unless you're on the mainstream, and then you just have to go with the narrative. But some things are happening with the Epstein saga, but will we actually get anything from it? Anything new? Probably not. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.